Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Maushi, and today we are going to learn something about how to draft a basic bodice pattern for a traditional Ghanaian kaba. Alright, so if you are new to this channel, remember to subscribe, like, and then to share. Alright, so let's jump right into it by drawing out our starting point, which is also our shoulder point. Let's label it shoulder, SHD. All right, good. Now we are going to take our horizontal measurements. All right, the first one being our bust point, which mine is 10 inches. And to find your bust point, ensure that you divide your bust circumference into 4 and then add 1.5 inches to it. Mine is always 10 inches, of course. So if you have a bust circumference of 34, yours will be 10 inches as well. It doesn't change. Now that we are done, we are going to measure out or mark out our shoulder to waist. I prefer mine to be 15.5 inches. It's what I feel fits my body beautifully, all right? Most people use 16 inches, all right? So you can do that, but I prefer mine at 15.5. Next, we are marking out our hip line, all right? Shoulder to hip. Mine is 22 inches. I prefer mine at 22 inches. That way it will sit at my first hip, all right? I don't want my kaba to be so long. So you decide what works best and what fits you best, all right? So as you can see, every measurement you take in relation to your bust point, your waist, your hip, it should always start from the shoulder line, just as you saw me do. All right, good. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to measure out our shoulder or our crossback. Mine is 14 inches. Now, divide that into 2 and you have 7 inches. So use your shoulder measurements as you see on the screen. Divide that into 2. Whatever measurements you get, you mark that right here. Now, we are going to measure out our shoulder slope, and you do that by marking 1 inch beneath that point you made before, which is your shoulder. All right, so right beneath that 7 inch, mark a 1 inch dot, as you saw me do. Now we are marking out our neck. What you saw me do was the neck width. Mine is 3.5, and I came down by 4.5 inches because I want my neck to be a bit deeper. All right, so you connect that with that curve as you saw me do. Next is to join this point, which is the shoulder slope point, to the end of the neck width. All right, now by doing that, you are going to get a slanted curve which represents the shoulder slope, as you see. It's right here. Now, you mark your armhole depth measurement, and to find the armhole depth measurement, divide your bust circumference into 6 and then add 1.5. Whenever I do that, I arrive at 7 inches. So it was that 7 inches you saw me mark right across. And on that 7-inch line from the center front to that side, that line you just saw me draw, that is your chest line. So you connect and you write out chest on that line. This line is your bust line. All right. Now this line is your waist line. And then right beneath that is your hip line. Now once we are done with it, we are going to divide the armhole depth line, which is 7 inches, divide that into 2. So your armhole depth measurement, divide that into 2. Mine will give me 3.5. All right. So I'll mark that right here. Do it as you see me do using your measurement. And then you will come in by a 1/2 inch, just as you see me do. All right. 1/2 inch. Regardless of the depth of your armhole, you always come in by 1/2 inch, all right, towards the neckline, not outside, towards the armhole, all right. So what you're going to do is we are measuring out our bust and dividing it into 4. This is a simple way of dividing whenever you have your tape measure with you. We do this a lot here. You can try it out too. Mine is 8.5. All right. So I'll measure that 8.5 from the center front outwards towards the armhole. All right. Not the other way around. Do that and you'll be confused. In fact, you will be wrong. So now we are joining our points together with our curve. Do it like so. See how beautiful it is. How crisp and neat. Do yours exactly as you saw me do. Now what we are going to do is we are going to work on our dart. First, your nipple to nipple measurement. Mine is 7 inches. Divide that into 2 and you have 3.5. All right, just as you see on the screen. So you mark that on your bust line, which is your bust point line. 3.5 right there. Next, use your waist measurement. All right, mine is 26. Divide it into now 4. This is a secret I am sharing with you. Is actually something I just discovered. I've for so long wanted to know this, how we arrive by this. Whenever I ask, I'll be told this is how we do it. When your measurement is small, use this and that. When your measurement is large, use this and that. But as to why that is so, I never really understood until just recently when I was making this video. It's such a funny story. So your waist measurement, divide that into 4. Now take 1/4 of that 4 and divide it into 2. So using my waist measurement of 26, divide that into 4. All right. Now the answer that I will get, which is 26 divided into 4, is 6.5. Now I'll divide that 6.5 into 2 and you have 3/4. All right. So that is the formula. Essentially, it's like 1/4 of your waist measurement or 1/4 of your hip measurement. All right. And then divide it into 2. So you divide your waist or your hip measurement into 4 equal parts. Take 1, divide that into 2. So that's what we've done. All right. Now we're going to connect the lines together. So now we connect our points together, all right, to form a contour that connect it like so, just as you see me do. All right, now that we are done, we are going to take in our dart, and we usually take in our dart at the waist line, 1/2 inch to the left of that 3-inch point, then 1/2 inch to the right of that 3-inch point. So whatever measurement you had, 1/2 inch to this side, 1/2 inch to that side, and then we will connect the point on the bust line to the 1/2 inch on the left hand side, and then that same point to the 1/2 inch on the right hand side, and then we will do the same thing, extend it downwards to meet that point on our hip line. All right, just as you see me do the same thing. Now at this point I realized my mistake. Usually your dart tip, which is the point on your bust point line, you should never touch your bust point line. All right, so I should have marked 1 inch beneath that bust point line. So if you are following along, do that. But you see how I made the corrections in the kaba that I sewed with this pattern. All right. So 1/2 inch beneath that bust point line will be your new dart line. All right. But follow along, you will find out how I made that changes. So right now we are marking in our sewing allowance. All right. I usually prefer 2 inches. All right. Taking in overlocking, all right, and the sewing. So 2 inches actually works for me. So 2 inches, you mark that as you saw me do. Now you mark out your waist measurement by dividing your waist measurement into 4 equal parts. All right. Now you measure the wideness of the dart, add it as you see me do. Then you add your 2 inches allowance. Some people prefer 1.5, whichever works for you. Do that. All right. Good. Now that we are done, you do the same for our hip. Your hip circumference, divide that into 4 equal parts and then mark it on your hip line. All right. Adding the 2 inches sewing allowance, just as you saw me do. Now we are going to connect the points together. All right. Connect it from the bust, from the chest line to the waist, all the way through to the hip, as you've seen me doing. All right. Now we are basically done with the Isn't it pretty? This is our front pattern. It's so cute, isn't it? And it looks so crisp, so neat. I hope yours turned out the same way. All right, so when you open out the fold, it will be like so. All right, so ensure that you are cutting yours on fold, just as you saw me do. Now we are going to work on our back pattern. Now the difference between the back and the front pattern lies in the zip line, the dart line, the dart. All right, where the front pattern, the dart touches on the dart line, which is 1 inch beneath the bust point line. For our back pattern, the dart tip will touch the chest line, all right, which is above the bust point line. So remember to mark out your shoulder line as you see me do. Mark it out neatly. Now mark out these points on your back pattern, just as you see me do. Once that is done, we are going to mark out our lines. I'm marking out our chest line, which is actually our bust point line for the back. All right, we are marking out our waist line, like you see me do, and then we are marking out our hip line, just like you see me do. Let's label this the zipper for the zipper allowance. Do the same thing for your pattern. All right, now just so that we don't get confused, we are going to fold this in, then make our cutouts. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to mark out our neck width. Mine is 3.5 inch. Use what suits you. Use what will fit you better. And I'm using a neck depth of 4.5 inches. All right, now you connect with your curve. Do so for your pattern. All right, now we are going to go on and mark half our shoulder measurement. All right, mine is 7 inches. Mark your armhole depth, your shoulder slope point, half, which is 1 inch beneath that half shoulder point. All right, connect it to the neck width, and then connect your armhole depth line. It will be in line with your chest line, which is right there. What you're going to do next is you're going to create our armhole curve. Now you see the difference between the front and the back armhole curves. For both sides, you find the midpoint of the armhole depth line. Then you measure out your bust circumference divided into 4. But in this case, you connect that point to the midpoint. You're not going to go in by 1/2 inch towards the center front. All right, that is the main difference between the back pattern, or the back pattern, and then the front armhole pattern. All right, now we are going to mark in our dart. So at the center, mark 3 inches. Do you recall how we did that for the front, right? Good. Yes. Now we are going to connect our points, and this is basically a contour dart, the Ghanaian way, right? The one that fits you and gives your dress such flattery form. All right, good. Mark out your waist measurement divided into 4. Add in that that measurement of 1 inch. You add your 2 inches sewing allowance, just as you see me do. Do the same thing for yours. All right, good. Once you are done, we connect the points, and that is basically it. You see, it's not that difficult. All right, so once you are done, you cut it out, just as you see me do. Cut it out beautifully in whatever fashion you can. Some will cut it out starting from the neckline, some will cut it out starting from the hip line. In the end, we will have a cutout pattern. Don't forget to cut your neck all the way through your zipper allowance. All right, good, just as you see me do so for your pattern. So I hope you've learned something from this tutorial. I will be going on ahead to sew the kaba. All right, so if you want to find out what happens next with this pattern, be sure to stick around. Now let's label this the front. Let's label this the back. And that's basically it. That's basically it. I made corrections where the dart line was concerned when I was sewing the kaba. So if you're interested in seeing how the kaba came out, don't forget to check out my next tutorial.